But because that's not the case, all solo mining becomes, at least in the case of Bitcoin at this time, is a gamble, which means you're just basically playing the lotto. You're not running a business, frankly. So I disagree with that from the perspective of Bitcoin, dependent on the amount of hash rate you have. If you have enough hash rate to generate a guaranteed amount of Bitcoin and you can work the cash flow numbers out for that to make sense, then it makes sense. If you can't, then it doesn't make sense. You're not going to be able to go, like if it was, if you try to consider a business and then you go to A, B, or C bank, any other business that would have this, and you say, well, you know, there's a 1 in 2,768,000 that I find a block in the next 15 years, right? And then you have to extrapolate how many times is Bitcoin going to have in that time, right? And what will the price prediction be in that time? It's just not it's not very business savvy. It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So when we're looking at this, the question that I really have at the end of the day is, you know, how influential are Bitcoin miners over the price of Bitcoin anymore? Like I said, due to these factors, I would say that Bitcoin is influenced by miners from a price perspective less than it has been in the past. And I think that we will see diminishing returns on the effect of miners on the price of Bitcoin as we move forward. And the effect of the price on Bitcoin will be purely dependent on the demand for use of Bitcoin, and seeing that unfortunately the demand for Bitcoin, because most blocks are empty right now statistically, is not very high. And I think that's why we are seeing a suppressed market this time around. I think it's a combination of factors. We could say, macroeconomic factors are playing a part. Yes. But I think it's just the way in which the miners are not having as much influence over the price. I mean, you can see this as well in an accelerated timeline, funny enough, on KASPA, where, 91% of the KASPA is in circulation now. Miners have almost zero effect on the price of KASPA at this point, right? And so KASPA's price is purely dependent on the availability in a centralized exchange, hence why MEXC has so much influence over the price of KASPA. And so it really will come down to who has the most influence. It'll be the largest holders. And then if there's no demand for it, then the price will stay, will not have the same euphoric effects that they have had in the past, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking at as far as this goes. It does say, following this up is that top players in the mining space are expanding still. And I think that has been apparent through April, but that has changed over the past couple days. So when they're writing this and they're talking about in the April timeframe, miners were, and you could say, all right, well, they're selling off 100, and so I'm giving the counter argument, right? They're selling off more of their Bitcoin to invest in more hardware to mine, which would mean obviously still in a bullish cycle moving towards increasing the hash rate of Bitcoin. Of course, bear market and bull market hasn't had as much of an effect on growth in the hash rate of the network. But you could say, well, they're looking at this and saying, okay, well, we're going to sell off 115% and then we're going to increase the amount of hash rate. Now, that looks good in April, right? Because the hash rate's going up. Doesn't look good right now. We've had a 3% plus drop on the amount of hash rate on the Bitcoin network since the beginning of May. And so we're seeing a huge drop off in the amount of hash rate. I mean, frankly, quite a bit, right? We're down in the 800 exahashes, I believe. you know, when we were crossing whatever 1,000, what exahash, zettahash, right? So when we were crossing into the zettahash, just in April, so or not in April, near last year. So there is miners are coming off of the network now. Is that all old hardware, and we're just waiting for the new hardware replacements potentially, right? And that's where tariffs could have had an effect. And those macroeconomic factors, right? Because you essentially, these public miners are preparing for upgrades to become more efficient. They sell off in bulk a bunch of their older hardware, S19s, S19 Pro Js, all that sort of stuff. And then they're investing in the S21s and so on and so forth. There is a little bit of evidence for that. I think the best evidence for that is like the price. Let's go to BT miners, because I saw this the other day. I don't remember what they're I just want to go, I want to search BT miners. Hold on, let me just log in here. We'll get the link. No, not a CAPTCHA. Give me a second, guys. They're going to CAPTCHA me. And I am failing horrendously at the CAPTCHA. Oh my God. No. It never ends. It never ends. There we go. So I thought this was it, right? I must have just typed it in wrong. ASIC miners. Bitcoin miners. And I saw this the other day. They had a bunch of S19J Pros for $360 a piece right now. Which tells me that's the evidence I have. I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. If you would like to see more from this particular episode, take a look up here. Don't forget to also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me directly, you can go to sonofatech.locals.com and become a member. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday.